Welcome back. It has been, by the time this episode will be published, it'll be probably close to a month um, since I recorded and published an episode. Made so many shifts and changes with my podcast. I mean, with my business, my brand, my voice. So much has changed. Um, and I had thought I would record twice a month, publish twice a month so that there was a bit of a cadence to this. I'm really leaning into honoring my authority, which is a process authority. And so I've been making shifts slowly, moved away from putting pressure on myself to record every week. That's just doesn't feel correct for me as a process authority, as an emotional authority. Um, and also doesn't feel correct for me as someone who wants to only I only wanna put out content when I'm moved to, I only wanna share what I'm actually moved to share. I don't want to, put out any more fluff content for the sake of the algorithm or the metrics or any of that kinda stuff. Um And so in making that shift and thinking, "Hey, I'll publish a couple times a month, that'll give me the room and the freedom." What I've realized and what I've experienced in giving myself that freedom is that it felt really good. And in giving myself that space and that freedom in my schedule, um, I've been showing up on Instagram stories and on Instagram lives a lot more often than I ever did before, and really sharing my own process, my deconditioning process, my day-to-day life process, so much more regularly on Instagram. And so part of that is that I don't record podcast episodes as often, because I don't feel moved to. I don't feel moved to because I enjoy sharing my process in such an organic way on Instagram stories, that in the last month, I really have not felt that movement from my authority to record an episode until now, until now. And so if you do track with me over on Instagram, I've been talking so much about some of what I am seeing in the online space. I've been talking so much about what I think is not working in the online space. And I've been talking a lot about personal experience. And if you understand some of the elements that make up substructure within human design, you might know that all of these pieces are related to some of the more nuanced and differentiated aspects of my own design. So I have a personal view. So I am meant to share from personal experience. So that's what you're going to hear today. You're going to hear this podcast episode is recorded and shared and expressed and articulated purely from my personal view. So you're going to hear that come through. I also have what's called guilt motivation. It's a funny term, a lot of terms in the traditional teachings of human design are funny terms. When we first come across them, guilt motivation simply means that I see problems. I can see problems very, very, very clearly. And when I see problems, I want to fix problems. Um, and that's just part of how my cognitive architecture is designed. I believe it's what made me an excellent psychotherapist. And I believe it's what still makes me an excellent clinical supervisor and an excellent guide is I can as soon as a person starts speaking, I can see where the problem is. I can see where they're stuck. I can see what's not working. And I can literally feel this pull inside of my body that's like, fix it, fix it, fix it, find the solution, share the solution, give the solution. So you're going to hear that today. You're going to hear guilt motivation coming through loud and clear today because I see a problem in the online space. And my solar plexus is very, very moved to fix it. So that's going to happen. You're going to hear some judgment sense coming through as well. It's how I'm designed. I can see what is happening in the collective, and when I feel that things that are happening within our collective are harmful, if I feel they are out of integrity, if I feel that we are not operating in a way that really honors people, honors humanity, honors the sacredness of the work that we are here to do. Um, Judgment sense comes in pretty strong. And so you are going to hear those aspects of my design. I also have a sixth line personality, role model personality. Um, I'm almost 46, preparing to come off the roof. So you will hear a lot of that coming through as well. I'm really feeling that internally, a very strong, like the pressure that I'm feeling right now, and not in a bad way. It's not a bad pressure. It's not root pressure that I'm feeling. I do have an undefined root. This is not root pressure. This is the pressure that I believe is innate for those of us with that six line personality, the role model personality. I feel the pressure building as I'm getting ready to come off the roof. I'm about to move from being the observer on the roof to really understanding what that quantum is of being observed and observer all at the same time as I move into that third phase of my six line life. Like this is what it is for me to be a 6-2. And I'm an emotional projector. So you're going to hear all of that. You're going to hear the emotions coming through. You're going to hear me speak from times where I was low in my wave, from times where I was higher in my wave, and you're certainly going to hear me speak from a place of clarity. I have had increased clarity over time as I have processed this entire experience through my authority. So you'll hear that. And of course, you'll hear that line to body coming through. I have a second line, body, the hermit, the natural. Those energies, of course, will come through. So this is a combination of some of the energies that make me who I am. Well, I wasn't planning on having an 8-minute introduction to what I'm going to talk to you about today, but there we have it. I want to talk to you about my personal experience of falling into the clutches of being influenced, We talk about influencers, we talk about social media, we talk about platforms, social media platforms being a place where we are consuming content and where we are constantly being influenced by influencers. And I am just as susceptible to being influenced as you are. And so this episode, I thought it was a clever title that I came up with. I called it Influenced. I decided this episode would be called Influenced, my personal experience with Pop HD. Where do I want to start? I have no script. I don't even have any notes for today's conversation. I am going to trust. I have the channel of the prodigal in my design. It's a channel that connects my G center or my identity center to my throat center. It is a channel that stores memories, it stores stories, it stores experiences. And then when it is the right time, I share those and I share them for the collective. I share them to help the collective. And so that's what's going to happen today. I often get asked, "Oh, when did you first come across human design? How did you come across human design? Who introduced you to human design?" And I can't answer that question with absolute clarity. I don't really know. What I do know is that when I took my first business online, so my psychotherapy practice, I had already been practicing virtual psychotherapy, like sort of I was doing half-time virtual, half-time in my physical clinic. I'd been doing that for several years. I had lots of clients when I was a psychotherapist that were had really full schedules. Um, Maybe they were entrepreneurs or C-suite within their organizations, and so efficiency was important to them. So I was already practicing virtually, but in 2020, when the world shut down, we made the decision to transition our clinic to be fully virtual, 100% virtual. We made that decision within 24 hours. We've never looked back as a team, as a clinic. I have zero regrets about that decision. It was an amazing decision for so many reasons for our clients, for me as the clinic director, for my team, so many reasons. So, no regrets about becoming an entrepreneur whose business is online. And then I launched a second business, the EQ Code, the coaching company that is also a virtual business. And I love it. It works for me for so many reasons. Mm, and one of the things that I have become acutely aware of um, since being so heavily immersed in the online space is being influenced, is the intensity and the prevalence and the seemingly inescapability. Is that a word? I don't know, but it feels to me like it's almost impossible to escape the the reality of being influenced when you are so heavily immersed in the online space. So I'm speaking to those who are maybe you are an entrepreneur and your business is online. Maybe you're not even an online entrepreneur. Maybe you're an entrepreneur, business owner. Maybe you don't even own a business, but you just spend time online. You spend time on social media. And I think one of the things that has happened, like one of the things that has happened, it's like one of the subconscious impacts of the pandemic, I think, that we're really just seeing now is how influenced we really are by social media, right? Like, I think back to life before 2020, and it's so radically different to life today. And one of the things I've noticed is the amount of time that we all spend online. And for me, as a business owner who was running 2 businesses and is still running 2 businesses online, the amount of time that I spend online is a lot more than it ever used to be. So, let me go back to that question. How did I meet HD? Somewhere online? I don't know. I don't really know exactly how and when. What I do know is as I was spending so much time online building, growing, delivering services inside both businesses, one of the things I came across was human design. I can't tell you which account, who, how, like there wasn't one of those moments for me, or I don't think I heard it on a podcast. That wasn't the first time I came across human design. I'm quite certain it was on Instagram. It was on Instagram, like it was on social media. And, at the time, I didn't know it then, but at the time, the content that I was consuming related to human design was content that I would now call pop HD. I had no idea that that's what I was consuming then. No clue, because I didn't know anything about human design when I first, of course, came into the knowledge that this system even existed. So, um my journey began by consuming what I would call popularized human design, popularized human design. And in a moment, I'll tell you what I think constitutes popularized human design and why it's a problem. But let me finish telling you about kind of my journey into the system. And somewhere along the way, I came across an influencer, and I'm not going to name anybody in this episode. I will never name specific names because the names really don't matter, number 1. And I think what I'm gonna share with you today is an experience that many people have had. You might have had an experience like mine, and you may not even know that this is the experience that you've had. And in fact, when I work with people now using human design, and let's say I do an analysis, quite often my clients are coming to me saying, well, I had a reading, but they weren't sharing. I didn't get the information that I'm getting from you, or even the information that I get just from consuming your content on Instagram or whatever it is. So many people are having this experience that I'm going to share with you today. So it doesn't really matter who. I think what I want you to get from this is hopefully some insight and some education that can help you to become more discerning around the content that you're consuming. So, somewhere along the way, I came into contact with an account, a company, a brand that I would consider an influencer brand, an influencer account of human design. And I was pretty excited about what I was seeing because this brand shared content that really spoke to my vulnerabilities as a person and as a business owner. So some of the content that I was engaging with were promises around what human design could do for me. Apparently, according to some of the content I was consuming, human design could make my life so much easier. It would make success effortless. I could learn exactly how to market and package and sell my products within my business in a way that was super easy. And I could also make millions and millions of dollars doing it. These were some of the claims made by this particular brand and by many brands. This, I'm not singling out one brand at all, many brands. And when I did my initial work with this brand, I did a reading with them. I even purchased some of their human design courses and their certifications. I was provided a reading that highlighted only the quote unquote positive aspects of my design. I left that reading feeling like, oh my God, isn't it amazing to be a 6'2" emotional projector? So, this sort of brings me right into seamlessly some of the aspects for me that point to content that has been popularized or homogenized. And what I mean by those terms is content that is created in order to achieve a particular outcome for the creator. So, whoever created the content is hoping for a particular outcome, could be more clients, more money, more business, whatever it is. And it's also created for mass appeal, to appeal to the masses, to sell something to the masses. And so some of the characteristics for me, again, personal view, just my perspective, some of the characteristics for me that I can now look back, I didn't know it at the time, that I can now look back and say, yeah, that is what was for me not okay about how this particular brand and many brands like it do business. So the first thing I think for me was a watered down version of the system. The human design system is incredibly complex. And I say this as someone who has studied some very, very complex sciences and some very complex systems. I was in school until I graduated from my doctoral degree when I was 2.5 months pregnant with my daughter. So I was 31. I did a lot of schooling, a lot of education, studied a lot of complex systems. And I can't really compare the human design system to some of the systems that I studied as a psychotherapist and as a couple and family therapist. But in terms of complexity, human design is either as complex or more complex. Right now, at this stage of my learning, it is feeling like it is more layered, nuanced, and complex. It is layered, incredibly layered. So when we take a system that is based in ancient and modern sciences, and we try to simplify it so that it is easier to sell, we actually lose the integrity of the system. We lose the integrity of the system. The integrity of the system is gone. When we water something down that has this level of complexity, you're not dealing with the same thing anymore. You're just not. Like, I don't know. I don't even know if I can think of an example. It's like, okay, the color red, right? The color red is the color red. If you add white to it and you keep adding more and more and more and more white to it, so it's softer and easier on the eyes and more, I don't know, like attractive to more people, so it becomes a super soft pink, and you sell me this baby pink thing, and you tell me, "Yeah, it's the exact same thing as red. This is red. This is just as good as red. It's just a little easier for you to understand." It's not the same thing. It's just really not the same thing, and I don't even know if that's a good example, but that's what I consider pop HD or popularized HD. And listen, I've spoken about this on my social media platform. This happens with psychology, it happens with psychotherapy, it happens with all kinds of sciences. We do this. We do this because I think because number 1, maybe we think people can't handle the whole thing, like, uh, people won't buy the whole thing if we tell people this is really complex and it's not all unicorns and roses, then people won't buy it. I mean, there's probably lots of really good reasons that consume that business owners make this choice, that practitioners make this choice. For me, they're just really out of integrity. The choice is out of integrity. The choice is out of integrity for me. I'm not saying the person is, because they may not even realize the damage. They may not even realize the impact. They may not even realize the complexity of what they're dealing with. And I do wonder that sometimes if even practitioners of the system may not really realize the complexity of the human design system. Sort of makes me think of, you know, psychotherapy only became a regulated practice, I don't know, part way into my own career. Like when I started practicing couple and family therapy, psychotherapy wasn't even a regulated practice. I can't remember the year that it became regulated, because I was like grandfathered in because I'd already been practicing for so many years, and then it became a regulated practice. And some people could practice and some people couldn't, and so there was this whole um, I don't know, filtering process that was happening with practitioners. And the reason that even came to be is because there were people practicing elements of psychotherapy, but they didn't have the fullness of the scope of the practice. And there was the potential that they could do harm to people. And so that's why the practice became regulated. And I'm not saying that human design should be a regulated practice. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is I do understand that there are probably practitioners of human design that are not intentionally harming people, but without knowing and understanding the fullness and the depth of the system, there quite likely is some unintentional harm being done because the system is complex. And it's not just like a personal development tool, right? It's much, much deeper than that, right? We're talking about genetics, we're talking about quantum physics. Like we are talking about some very complex sciences. We're talking about some very, very complex sciences. So anyway, let me go back. So watering down, that's a real problem. And it it's actually harmful to water down the system. And this is again, I've had personal experience of this. The second thing I think, or the next thing is omitting aspects of the system. So, and I think this happens in a lot of areas where we sell people or give people what we think they can handle and what we think they will buy. So we omit some key pieces of a system or of a science so that it's easier for us to sell. So, perfect example is, I've talked to so many people, and this happened to me as well. You get a human design reading, and you walk away with only the quote unquote good parts of your design. But the entire human design system is about duality. The entire thing. All of it is about duality. Everything is a duality. For example, being an emotional being. I have an emotional authority. It makes me an emotional being. It is a massive duality. Massive. Like I get the incredible benefit of having um, a depth that comes with having an emotional system, the wisdom that comes from having an emotional system, the clarity that comes from being able to ride through my wave. There's this incredible benefit to having an emotional system. The flip side to that is there is never any truth in the now for me. Never. The duality to the depth, the clarity, the wisdom is that I am not designed to make decisions in the moment. I'm not. And you can sugarcoat that and you can make it all just seem like it's amazing, but living it out day to day, there are so many times where my authority doesn't fit the timing of society. There are so many times where I am being pushed and pressurized by society to make a decision quickly, and it's still hard for me to say, "I'm sorry, I cannot give you a yes right now." So if I'm being pushed to give an answer, it's gonna be a no. That's not easy. But that's those aspects are often not highlighted in a reading or, a course, let's say an online course that you take on human design. Quite often, what we are selling people and what we are giving people are only the good aspects of their design. We're not sharing the duality of it. In fact, I've heard practitioners that provide readings say, I always want people to leave the reading feeling good. I always want them to leave feeling like they've got the best design. And it's not their fault. It's not the practitioner's fault. This is a systemic issue where we are training, there are brands, there are companies training practitioners to deliver readings that make people feel good. That would be like, this is funny. I say this to my psychotherapist team all the time. Like, your job is not to make people feel good. Your job is to help them solve the issue that brought them to therapy in the first place. It's not a feel good thing. For me, psychotherapy is not a feel good business. Human design is not a feel good business. It's not. These are people's lives. And if we're going to teach people to live according to their design, if we're going to teach people to live in the fullness of who they are, we have to show them the good, bad, and the ugly. Because the truth of it is, every single design, every single configuration has good, has bad, and yes, it has ugly. There are some ugly aspects to my design. Doesn't make me a bad person. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me, but there are some gnarly dualities that I live with on a day-to-day basis and that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And it's what makes me human. It's what makes me who I am. It's what allows me to connect with people in the depth that I'm able to connect with them. And so that is, I think, sort of the second problem. I wasn't even planning on having a flow to this, but I feel there's a bit of a flow happening right now. So the first problem, what was it that I said was the first problem? Watering down the system. The second problem is omitting parts of the system, like taking out what's bad, just selling people what you think they're gonna buy, what they're gonna perceive as good, right? This for me goes along with that whole like high vibe, stay high vibe propaganda that's out there. That's something that I wrote about very recently on Instagram. I got a lot of feedback about that. Toxic positivity goes along with that. And then I think the last thing that I experienced that really left a sour taste in my mouth, um, is modifying the system. Modifying the system. And this one, I don't know how this happened. Like, this one, truly, I don't know how this happens. I don't know if one person modified it unintentionally and then it just trickles down because then you teach that modified version, right? And so there are many, 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 many ways that the system has been modified and continues to be modified. Lots of different ways. I think even the way that we refer to energy types, there are really only four energy types. There are only four. but in many versions of human design, you will hear that there are 5. The 4 types are reflectors, manifestors, projectors, and generators. That 5th type is actually simply a subtype of a generator. Manifesting generators are simply a subtype of generators. I believe, personal view, the only reason that manifesting generator is being called a 5th type is because of the popularization of the term manifestation. Believe it was another way to appeal to people's needs, vulnerabilities, all those things. But there are really like that's a modification of the system. There are 4 types. Another really common one that I see is calling the variables in human design arrows, those arrows, and I get it's kind of an easy marker, right? When you're teaching people, those arrows that, sort of flank the head on a body graph. I get that. The correct term is variables. But then the real modification that has happened, and I don't know how this one happened, is teaching people that one of the variables will teach you how to manifest what you want. I'm sure we've all heard it, the manifestation arrow. It's something literally that I have personal experience with. I was taught this in my original training of human design, that there is a manifestation arrow, and it is scientifically incorrect. It's it's a modified teaching. It's an incorrect teaching. So for me, this is I've had personal experience with it. I had a lot of um very strong emotions come up for me when I realized that what I had consumed, what I had invested my time, energy, and money on, what I had been learning, like this was part of a certification that I was doing in human design. What I was learning was actually watered down, modified, incorrect, information was omitted. When I realized that this is what had happened, that I had been bamboozled, that I had been, like, duped, like, truly influenced, I mean, I was angry. I was really angry. I was angry. I was upset. Yeah. So when I say I have a very personal experience with the harm of pop HD, and this could be pop anything. This could be a popularized diet. This could be pop psychology, popularized anything. I have a personal experience with it, and it was harmful to me. It did, however, lead me to really seek out resources, to seek out brands, companies, people, accounts, mentors, teachers, guides that were teaching the system in its original form. In its original form. And I believe in that. I believed in that as a psychotherapist. So, as a psychotherapist, I remember when I wanted to learn. So, this was after my doctoral degree was in couple and family therapy. And after I graduated, I can't remember how long afterwards, but I wanted to really go deep and learn a modality of therapy called emotionally focused therapy. And when I decided to invest even more money after already having 3 degrees, my husband was not happy, but he supported me. I decided I wanted to learn even more, take more courses, do more training, go deeper, do some more certifications. It was an emotionally focused therapy, and I learned from the founders, the creators of the modality, right? I learned from the gurus, like the ones that really understood the system deeply. I wanted to learn from them. This was very, very important to me. And one of the things I say to my clinicians is when you are learning a modality, when you're learning a system, learn it in its purest form. After that, if you decide you're going to integrate system A with system B, that's fine. But when you're learning a system, learn the integrity of the system. And so for me, that was really important with design. I really wanted to learn the system in its integrity. I want to learn it in the traditional language. If even if some of the traditional language is a little bit confusing, it's a bit hard to get my head wrapped around, like learning that I have guilt, motivation, and judgment sense. You know, I didn't like those words. I understand what those words mean now, and I can totally see it in myself now. But when I first learned about these aspects of me, believe me, I was not like, oh, wow, that's cool. I have guilt motivation. I'm just here to fix things. I see problems and I have judgment sense. I'm here to bring judgment to the collective so that I can bring correction to the collective. Like, that's not sexy, right? Who wants that? Um, Now I've learned to totally embrace it. But I believe in learning, especially when we're new to something. Like, let's have a little humility. Let's have a little reverence for what it means to be a student of something. I consider myself a student of human design, a student of the system. And so I desire to learn the system in its integrity. And so part of that journey for me was really coming into what is called source based material. So, source based material is either the original teachings of human design or very, very close to the original teachings. So it's material that's derived from some of the people that would have been first generation human design students or second generation human design students. So that whole difficult experience for me with POP HD led me down the path of coming into source-based material and source-based mentors and source-based teachers and accounts and all of those sorts of things. And I will tell you that I have fallen very deeply in love with the system. Now that I have the fullness of it, now that I can understand the nuances, I love duality. I love duality. I love that life is a constant duality, that we can stand in an experience that feels good and bad all at the same time. I love that. I live for that. I am an emotional being, so maybe that's part of it, you know? And I don't know, my history as a psychotherapist, like, I don't know what makes me love duality so much. But I believe in duality. I believe duality is necessary. I believe duality is powerful. I believe duality is what changes us. And what I love so much about the human design system is not just the layers and the nuances and the depth and the never ending ability to learn more and more and more and more and more about who we are and about the other and humanity and all these things, but it's the duality of all of it. Every single aspect of design has a duality, and I'm here for it. I am here for the duality. I'm here for the good. I'm here for the bad. I'm here for the ugly. I'm here for all of it because I believe it's in the good and the bad and the ugly that we find our depth and our beauty, that we find our wisdom and our clarity, that we find our unique, differentiated self. And so while it was very difficult for me to go through this experience and this journey of realizing I was sold what felt like a lie. And I know that's a strong word, but I'll tell you, that's how it felt. It felt like I was sold a lie and I bought it. I was influenced. I bought the lie. And while that was really a difficult experience for me, I am grateful for it. I can honestly say now, today, I am grateful for that experience because it's allowed me, I think, to deeply understand and appreciate how easily and heavily influenced we can be. I consider myself an intelligent woman. I do. I consider myself a discerning individual, and yet I was influenced. I was influenced. So I have this deep appreciation for that reality. I also have an incredibly profound appreciation for the depth of what the human design system really is. And I feel so privileged to have found it. I feel so privileged to be able to live as myself by understanding my design. And I feel so incredibly privileged that I have the opportunity to walk with and guide other beings, other humans that also desire to live as their authentic self. I think that's a wrap. I think that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed listening to this conversation as much as I deeply enjoyed sharing it with you. We'll chat again soon.